we move ahead, for this next session, we have three esteemed panelists. Dr. Farooq Wasil, CEO, Goldline Education. With over 30 years of involvement in the field of education, Dr. Farooq Ahmad Wasil, a doctorate specializing in education, is currently with Goldline Education, Dubai, UAE, as Chief Executive Officer from July 2013. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Farooq Wasil. And there's Mr. Sandy Hooda. He's the founder of Vega schools, which are culmination of extensive research on why and how we learn. His life mission is to get people to question and rethink education. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Sandy Hooda. And we have Mr. Gary Coyle. Mr. Gary Coyle is the Director of Technology at the American Embassy School, AES, in New Delhi, India, where he previously served as the Elementary School Technology Coordinator. Prior to AES, he taught in both public and private schools in the US and at the Singapore American School. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Gary Coyle.
Sorry for running a little late. I hope we'll be able to finish this in time. I will straight away start with Sandy. Sandy, if you can share, like we have been talking about, it's not only about curricula, instruction, and assessment, but being a school leader today, you need to redefine and reinvent and rebuild the institution as well. So how do you think that this need can be met in form of a school?
Yeah. A few years ago, I met Mr. John Hardy, who created the Green School in Bali, which has possibly won more awards on school architecture than any other school in the world. And for the first few minutes that we spoke, it was at a bar in Delhi, he only spoke of architecture. So I said, John, I mean, come on, you're running a school. Why architecture? So he said, Sandy, have you ever seen a church and the impact of the church architecture on the minds of the people? Of course, here the context is different. We are talking about teachers and children. But so that's the first time that I got thinking about how relevant architecture is in the learning process. In the 19th and 20th century, the schools were built on the basis of the industrial age, factories, batches, similar kind of processes, everyone, all the products being built on an assembly line in a similar manner, which is what kind of reflects the schools of today. The schools of 19th and 20th century look a lot like a factory from the 19th and 20th century. Come 21st century, we are entering the knowledge age, the knowledge era, where the qualities that help us succeed are our entrepreneurial skills, our ability to innovate, work with others, solve problems, be resilient, and so on. And therefore, schools of today need to look very different. If we look at the big companies in the world, look at the Google headquarters, Microsoft, Apple, etc., they completely reinvented their working spaces. And there's some research that says that that's led to between 10 to 47% improvement in their employee productivity and growth. So the time has come for us to seriously reimagine our learning spaces. And honestly, if you ask me, it's already too late. So as educators, I would implore you to think a little bit about that and get that going.
So you mentioned in the morning, Dr. Wasil, that we'll be talking about a larger sphere rather than just few topics. Obviously, I understand that, again, this is one of the important pieces, but not the only pieces. So, but still, what changes do you think are required with respect to learning spaces and school environment specifically, according to you?
I think at design, from the Indian perspective, think about a world when you have, by 2050, 3 more billion people getting on this planet. Think of the schools in, metros or Tier 2 or Tier 3 cities. Can you afford a big land parcel in Bombay? Does that mean that you don't create the complete learning environment experience for the children? They should not have physical development, that should be compromised. So you will be forced, by virtue of the way the landscape is changing, the way we are living as humans on this planet, that you'll have to rethink school in terms of their designs, because designs will have a serious impact on the learning. I don't know whether this is the forum. There's a huge understanding that needs to be created. The education over the last, say 30 years, I would say conservatively, has drastically changed. I mean, the extraction of gold in the last 30 years has been more than what man has extracted in the last 5,000 years. Every day you are writing 1,000 books. What kind of reach you are looking at in terms of understanding and knowledge? 5 facets of education you must understand today. The first is the very purpose of education. Why are we educating? It has taken a completely paradigm shift. You don't prepare students for tests or rudimentaries. You prepare them for life. So what kind of design is there that can give them the life experience? The teacher, the student. You know, there's a shift now. It's not the teacher's responsibility to learn. It's the student's responsibility. Now, it's student-centric, not teacher-centric. So the content is, I don't know how people define content in books. There's nothing, you look at it. I mean, I was looking at my friend who was giving me the presentation. I was talking, being in tech conference, I would say I would prefer a virtual tour than physically pay you the money and go there. I mean, because everyone can't reach there. Now look at the change that is going to happen in the design elements. And design also, if you look at India, I was doing this exercise on designs, you have 4, ecological zones. You can create 4 concise, fit to the frame designs. Talk about Kashmir, the schools. You have almost 4 months dysfunctional schools. No heating. Go into the summer, you will find totally, who is paying attention to these details? At the end of the day, you will see the contact time you're losing on the curriculum. So therefore, I think the future schools have to be well designed. They have to be designed, which we have to think very deliberately, and and then it's a resource, it's a money, it's a serious resource. I mean, you can find a lot of, new generation schools here, where if conservatively look at the construction, you can save a lot of money and put that into learning resource. So therefore, I think design will remain the premium in terms of developing good quality schools. And if you compromise a good design, you compromise learning. They say curriculum fits the building. And if you don't have a right building, right resources, I'm sure that it's going to impact teaching and learning as well. And more so, the learning today from traditional classroom to e-learning to distant learning. The location of education is not classroom. You can't see school per se as classroom. It's everywhere. It's pervasive. As I said in the morning, the 4 myths about learning, please understand. In school, you don't learn. Learning is always outside, in the corridors, in the neighborhood, in the community. So the school has to be a community by itself. It has to have a larger connection with the community. You're talking about today parent engagement, parent involvement. How do they get involved? Schools will not be traditional buildings, that they may be the vibrant community centers we are looking at. I hope that you'll find some answers when you talk about design, school design and its implication on teaching and learning.
Thank you so much for the thoughts. Mr. Gary, what he just mentioned, like it should be a community. So how would you define a 21st century learning environment in those terms?
That's an excellent question. I think at the most basic level, a 21st century learning environment is the people, the places, and the things that support student agency and choice in their learning journey, that provide authentic learning opportunities for them, and that facilitate creativity, collaboration, communication, and critical thinking. And so if we go back and we look at those things, it was no mistake that I mentioned people first, because without teachers and administrators that believe in providing students opportunities to authentically learn and demonstrate their learning, the most beautiful buildings in the world and the most impressive architecture that we have is lost. And so it really starts with, having that strong vision of what you believe in for education. Then, like Mr. Hooda was saying, the physical environment can't be, understated. We want opportunities for children to have places that are flexible in their use, that provide those places where they can explore their passions, where they can authentically demonstrate their learning, where they can collaborate and work with one another. And so some of it is designing spaces that have flexibility, where you can configure them in a variety of different ways using a variety of different furniture, with desks maybe being totally optional. You know, we're not, you know, we're hopefully moving past that industrial age of education. Equally as important as that physical environment is that robust online learning environment. Because as, you know, the other panelists said, learning occurs outside of the classroom. And we really need to provide our students opportunities to do that, both during the school day and outside of the school day. Whether it's a virtual world like Minecraft, or whether it's a robust LMS where students can, you know, access content 24/7 if need be. Additionally, we want to provide them opportunities that, you know, extend outside the four walls of the school. You know, it's very easy once you're online. You're in a whole different world. You're in a whole, you know, different multicultural world, and that's a very important part of that 21st century learning environment. And then finally, there are, you know, the things, and that's sometimes the easiest piece, you know, finding the tablet or the BYOD device or the 3D printer. But it's really those people, those places, and those things together that make that 21st century environment.
So Sandy, from what he just said, how do you think that the classroom design might encourage students and teachers to actually embrace new pedagogies? So what are your views on that?
Yeah, I think before I answer that question, I want to say that some very interesting questions are being asked around the world. A couple of months ago, the Chinese Communist government has made a decision, they passed a diktat actually, that in Beijing, teachers cannot lecture more than 33% of the time. Now, why have they done that? They've done it because they feel that while China is the manufacturing hub of the world, they are not the innovation hub of the world. And they feel that the Chinese student will only become an innovator if teachers become innovators. And if teachers are confined to lecturing only 33% of the time, they have to find new ways, innovative ways of teaching. So that's a very bold move. In our country, in India, Prime Minister Modi is talking about innovation. But again, you know, India is the land of imitators. Unfortunately, that began post the British colonial rule. In 1755, India contributed to around 30% of the global GDP. Today, we are less than 2%. And I don't think there's any single big patent or product or technology that we've created in the last couple of decades on a global scale. So the issue is that we need to go from being imitators to innovators. Now again, architecture plays a role, and I know that images tell 1,000 words. So I wanted to show you, share some images of one of our partner schools in San Diego, High Tech High. Incidentally, John Shea, who was the head of the high school at AES, he was one of the founding folks there. So could you just take us through some of these pictures? Now, just pause there for a minute. These are some of the qualities of a new school, of a good school, of a great school. This school could be in a village, it could be in a town, city, it doesn't matter. But these are some of the things that the school architecture should support. And if you just click further into some images, you'll see that how architecture plays a role in each of these qualities.
So watching the images, I would like to quote a question to maybe Dr. Wasil
Yes.
or you.
Sure.
Like, what was the aim of creating a 21st century school architecture? Like, where do people start?
Yeah, I'll let Dr. Wasil take the answer.
I think, you know, you need to understand what are the characteristics of a 21st century learner in order to understand why 21st century schools. He will have in-depth knowledge of learning technology for effective use. He will have critical thinking skills to cope with the information explode. As I said, you know, this morning when I was talking to panelists, what is the threshold at a tipping point when you can understand between information explode and anxiety? He will have the effective use of social media. the most potential medium of actually learning and teaching. We don't understand. Vocational bias to his learning. It will be more experiential learning rather than bookish and theoretical assumptions. He will work effectively in virtual teams. And he will spend much of his time learning outside the school environment, physical environment. And he will collaborate with academics and social communities across the globe. So therefore, if these are the characteristic attributes of 21st century learner, then the schools, they have to have a pervasive technology. That means existing everywhere, available for everyone. He should have seamless environment where he can support all stakeholders across learning spaces. And learning spaces is not particularly confined to school then. It's global, it's everywhere, it's in the outer world. He will have global connectivity to accommodate anybody from anywhere. Look at a classroom which is globally connected. Look at the richness of experiences, the share of ideas. As we said, okay, they can learn from peers. They can influence them. Those are the ideas which are going to be facilitated through this generation of schools. He will have support to learning with information commons. It's there. And he will have improved methods. Teachers' role will be redefined in this new, 21st century school. So the learner attributes have changed. The methodology and the engagement have changed. The very purpose of education has changed. Therefore, the design and the buildings must change. They cannot be didactic, industrial model. You look at schools today, even in the current scene, you have rows of desks. Why? You ask anyone why 33% is a pass mark still. After 60 years of independence, haven't we evolved as educators? It's not that our children are performing better. These are reflective questions. I know it's not going to get right in a day, but if we start thinking, and the thinking starts now, I'm sure that future is with you people. The youngsters coming to education, there'll be more talent coming because they will see more challenge, more thinking, more research, more action. So we have become stale in some ways. It's hard for us to change now. So give us the liberty of being where we are. We have inertia. That's why country is not moving ahead, because we still hold the power and we don't let you go and prove and do well in life. So I'm sure that 21st century schools will have to be definitely designed in a manner which can support 21st century learning.
Absolutely.
If I may draw an analogy, I think a great space to learn should resemble a Lego. A Lego allows us to modify, to create a space or to create anything that supports what we are trying to do. So, so I wanted to show you a short video of one of the schools that we are creating in Gurgaon that's based on about 2 decades of research on how we learning spaces. And you'll get a sense of how the space is just like a Lego set. Anything can be changed, modified, removed. And again, architecture only supports what you do inside, but architecture must support what you do inside.
I think watching these videos, Gary, I think you would be having a great perspective about this. Like, what are the why is technology a critical part of such a design process? Like, because we have been talking about technology implementations, both hardware in terms of hardware and software. How important is that to be kept in mind?
Right, it's very important because technology amplifies everything that you do within the school itself. It amplifies the ability to be cooperative with those workspaces that were so beautifully shown in the video. It amplifies the ability for students to be active learners. It gives them access to materials that go well beyond those four walls. It amplifies the ability for them to demonstrate their understanding. It allows them to, assess their learning in ways, well beyond the paper and pencil or standardized test. Technology affords all of, those pieces. In addition, to build upon what Dr. Wasil was saying, it's really, the critical elements are, some of those cultural identity pieces of the school also that technology amplifies. It amplifies the ability of students to have a voice in their education. It amplifies the ability for them to have choice over what they're learning. It amplifies the ability for them to be reflective in their learning, to create a culture of thinking within the school. A robust technology system allows for problem seeking and problem solving on the parts of the students, not just digesting a set curriculum. And finally, it allows students to connect not only within the school itself, but to connect outside the four walls. The virtual environment is, an important part also of the child's learning experience. And so technology, really at this point is, as essential as paper and pencil was 50 years ago.
Absolutely. I personally have two more questions for the panelists. So, but before I go into that, I just want to know if someone has a question for the panelists from the audience.
Are you designing these schools in the cities, or are you designing them in somewhere in the rural Haryana also? Have you designed any school in Soipa?
No, sir, it's a great question. The purpose of our existence is not to create a school. It's to find a way through the process of creating a school or schools to find a way to show that education can be done differently. So.
I personally feel education was much better when the Guru Shishya Parampara was there. It has deteriorated. And what I'm saying is, are you designing some school in that rural Haryana where you can really contribute positively and in a really significant manner?
We support 17 schools in near Missouri, and these schools are absolutely incredible. In fact, if any of you want to go see these schools, there's an organization called SID, and we support SID. And Mahatma Gandhi said something very interesting. He said that in education, the subject should not be the object. The object should be the subject. So the great thing about schools in rural areas is that they have so many opportunities to create great learning, multidisciplinary learning. So what Mahatma Gandhi was trying to say was that if you want to learn history, geography, biology, you could actually start with a tree and then weave things back into the learning process. So we do support, to answer your question, schools in villages. For us, the idea is not to pick a particular city or a state or whatever the case be. We want to create schools at different levels, exemplar schools at different levels, in cities, in towns, in villages, so that people can see that education can be done differently.
People have to invite us. No, we'll invite them. But my point is not costly design. I'm just designing for better designs. I mean, the same material, same cost could be designed in a different way. So could it be designed in the rural areas also with the same cost, same effectiveness?
I think this relates to one of the questions that I had, that is like, can we amend the current classroom settings as well? Because that's what we are talking about.
There are millions of examples available in the world where low budget schools with the same impact and effect have been created. The question is, the purpose. First you define the purpose of building. Unless you don't define, you see, it's like this. We were talking about, will the schools will remain as they are? The question you need to ask. With absolute respect, I will ask you, have you ever heard these schools maintaining level of noise which is healthy or which is not healthy? Have you ever even pondered about whether students have a proper lighting in the classroom which impacts their eyesight? I can show you millions of these designs actually hindering the learning process. So the question here is, the new age design is not that it is going to dramatically do different things, but it is going to rope in those very essential elements that have an impact on teaching and learning. It has nothing to do with the scale. You can scale it up, you can scale it down, but if you retain those finer elements which are going to make impact in teaching and learning by designing these beautiful schools, whether in peripheries or metros, they will have the similar impact on teaching and learning. So therefore, this notion, sometimes we get confused. Or is it an affluence? Is it a steroid cost of these affluent people who talk about good schools and tracks and everything? No. I give an example. By 2050, 3 billion more people, you may not have the land parcel available. But education still will remain contextual in terms of providing holistic education. And holistic education is about the development of mind as well as the body. So how do you design schools which can then provide it? So therefore, you need to think beyond the box. Look at schools not as physical housing buildings, but look at them part of the vibrant life process. It's a life cycle. You look at green buildings today. Suppose you have environmental challenges. Can you afford to have buildings like this? You have natural calamities on daily basis. You will be more transparent. You will be asked more questions. You and me had the luxury of concealing things. The young educators who are going to mentor this leadership, they will be absolutely transparent. People will see through and say, why are you doing it? You have to answer these questions. You have to satisfy both student as well as that aspiring parent who wants good education for his child. So therefore, I think it's a time for educators of our age to think afresh and start aligning this new thinking. And don't see it as an impediment in the process of delivery.
I think it's very well put by
Dr.
you.
Farooq sir, have you seen Ma Arvindo's school in Pondicherry? By the way?
I have, yes.
It vibrates with joy, it vibrates with energy, it vibrates with education.
So what brings joy there?
No, it is the design of purely Indian, ancient Indian values.
I respect that. So what brings the joy? Is it the building or is it the values we live in?
No, yes, it is their ethos.
Exactly.
That's the reason.
I gave you some example today that Gurukul is the most inclusive school in our culture, and if we better take pride in our history.
Yeah.
What happened to Gurukul?
No, I happen to be the director, and thank you so much.
So we should blame him.
So because you put it very well, if you are clear about the aim and the vision, the purpose, then I think whether it's technology or learning space, we can think over it. So does anyone else have a question? Has a question?
I think when you are diverting the topic a little bit, with what I understand that how do we use the space as a learning aid? And Delhi government also had a program called Bala, building as learning aid. So probably we would like to from Sanjay that whether it is in the urban area or the rural area, how do we use? The limitations will be there. What will be in Gurgaon will not be in a small city. But how do we use the learning spaces which enhances the learning process? It can be at a small scale or even at a large scale. So do you have some design which caters to different subjects, different skills which will go to the child? And are there something that we can put in the school?
In the past 3 years, I've traveled to around 50 schools around the world, including rural schools in India as well. What I find is that in some ways, it's actually easier to make great learning happen when you're learning under a tree, because all the characteristics of inquiry-based learning, of the ability to work in small groups, large groups, peer learning, a team of teachers working with, all these things can be done, because the idea is, like I said, a learning space needs to be like a Lego set. So, so let's fast forward to today. I'm spending a lot of my time with the Gurgaon school, and it's almost ironic that some of the big things we are trying to do with the school are an attempt to make it as similar as possible to an environment in the hills. So, for example, we talk about, I think Dr. Wasil talked about natural light and other elements. A big one is carbon dioxide. And many people don't realize that if you're sitting in a room, in fact, this room, for more than a certain period of time, the CO2 count will go above 1,000. And that means the learning dips significantly. Some of the best schools I visited around the world, they had CO2 monitors in their learning areas. So I said, hey, why do you have this? So they said, because we monitor. The minute the CO2 count goes above 1,000, we move the kids to a different place. So we are trying to bring fresh air exchanges into the building. Pollution is another big one. I mean, where we sit today is the most polluted city on earth. Gurgaon actually is more polluted than Delhi because you also have construction dust, which adds to the vehicular pollution. So we had to work very hard to find relatively economical ways of creating a building which is pollution-free. So our school is the first school in the country which is completely pollution-free, where air will be as pure as air in the hills. So it's almost ironic that we are putting in so much time and effort to create an atmosphere which is easily achieved under a tree on a hill station.
It's also sustainability. Suppose, why you do change halogens with the solar? I mean, the question is, you will have pressures. You cannot manage it. The resources are becoming less and less, and we are increasing the number of users. So therefore, let us practically look at this aspect. So it's not going to be an easy journey for anyone. So therefore, we must think intelligently and think intelligent designs. That is going to be sustainable designs in the process.
So I think let's wrap up the session, and thank you so much, panelists, for your time. If someone has a question, they can take it offline so that we can begin the next session. Thank you so much.
Thank you all the panelists for such an inspiring session. We would like to facilitate them on the behalf of EdTechReview and ELC partner. Mr. Gary Coyle. Mr. Sandy Hooda. Dr. Farooq Wasil.